No.
Did he really?
Yes, it was. Okay, we've got our saviors, otherwise known as Senator Ruff and Senator Hanger. Okay, I will call this meeting to order, and clerk, you want to take a roll?
Ayes 9, no 0. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum?
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum, and while we do, let me take care of a little bit of business. Senate Bill 844 was my bill on stormwater management. I am going to strike that bill. I think we will see a bill come over from the House, and we'll deal with it at that time. But I am not the right patron for this. I think it got a little bit bigger than this little guy from Fairfax City. So we've got a motion and a second to strike the bill. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 9, no 0.
Okay, ayes 9, no 0. Then we have not one but two great compromises, as I understand. One I know for a fact, the other one I need to learn about. And before they unravel, I wanted to have a report. And I think what we'll start with is Senator Lewis, your Senate bill. And I apologize, I know I've got patrons in the audience, but if I could get Senate Bill 1231, and let's have a report on that great compromise, which I think will involve the distribution of a substitute. And this is the bill on biomass.
Mr. Chairman, when we get down there.
Good, please. Let's take. If we could distribute the
Move to
substitute.
adopt the substitute. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the substitute to Senate Bill 1231. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the substitute is adopted and before us. Senator Lewis, tell us about biomass.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move, but unfortunately, I left my
Binder upstairs.
Okay.
So if you really want to go fast, I can get some folks up here that can run you through the substitute, or you can give me a pass and I'll get my binder.
Why don't we
down.
do this? I know I've got folks from environmental and forestry. Why don't we get one of each come up and tell us what's going on? And just as a preface, we've been meeting on this for a couple weeks, and I asked / begged these folks to find a compromise, and I think we finally got there. So tell me.
Mr. Chairman, we did.
Okay.
So the substitute for the committee today is a compromise we believe represents thoughtful agreement balancing the concerns expressed by the parties involved. We thank the stakeholders that engaged in that discussion. Biomass is an important outlet for our sawmills. It allows us to do good forest management in the forest with wood that would otherwise be considered waste wood. Again, this is thoughtfully considered. You can walk through any components or aspects of the bill that you want to, but.
I'm just curious, how do we end up defining biomass? Or
It is as currently defined in the code, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
and specific to subsections 1, 2, and 4 of 1308.
Okay, and I guess the major piece here is we talk out the requirement that the biomass facility shut down. Is that
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay. And I see some other language in the 90s about fuel by forest product manufacturing residuals, and then you have definitions of those residuals.
That's correct. That's where those apply, the definitions in terms of the scope of
Okay.
what materials will qualify for RECs.
Okay. All right, Blair, you got anything to add?
I would just thank folks, Kyle and Corey, for working with us on this bill, and at this time, we are able to move to neutral.
Okay, all right. I want to thank everybody, and this was a lot of work from both environmental folks and forestry to get to the right place. And do I have a motion on the bill? Got a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, open the roll. All right, good work, gang.
Ayes 9, noes 1, abstentions 1.
Okay, what I'm going to do before I get to the next great compromise, who do I have? I have McPike, D-Steph, and then Cosgrove in that order. Who's physically? I see John. All right, Senator Cosgrove, come forward, and I see Senator Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This should be fairly brief. I have before you Senate Bill 1152. I have been working with the different parties that have expressed interest in this, and I just spoke with your staff. I think I found the answer that everybody's happy with. What I wanted to do is exempt the armed forces of the United States from having to go before the local wetlands board. And this was at the request of the city of Virginia Beach. But there's been some pushback from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and Rappahannock Group. So, Mr. Chairman, if you would, I need a substitute, and I'll just tell you what it is. If you
Okay,
just
can
adopt
we,
it in concept.
yeah, can I have a motion and a second to adopt the substitute?
So moved.
Do we have one?
No,
Are you going to explain it?
yes. Yes,
Okay.
I'd like to explain it to you first. So.
Okay, so you're going to explain to us what the substitute is,
Yes,
but we
sir.
don't actually have it in front of us.
Correct. Yeah, we just came to concurrence on this.
Okay, why don't you explain what the substitute will do?
All right, the substitute will require the Virginia Marine Resources Commission, in conjunction with local wetlands boards and other affected state and federal agencies, to develop procedures for an expedited processing of wetlands permits. And it's just for agencies of the United States. That would be
Okay,
it.
so you have that written down on a sheet of paper.
It's right here. I just need to change a may to a shall.
Change may to a shall.
Yes, sir.
And that's it?
That's it.
Okay.
It'll be under section 28.2-1307.
Okay, any questions for the patron? Okay, anyone want to testify on this bill, VMRC?
If anyone on Zoom would like to testify on this bill, please raise your hand electronically. There are no speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I have concurrence of Chesapeake Bay Foundation on this. They came up with this language.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman, is this a substitute because it's a new section? Is that?
It would be a substitute, yes, ma'am.
Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we move the substitute and you can hand it to staff and then you'll, do that on the floor, so.
All right, I can make a motion.
Motion is second to move the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, substitute is now before us. Do I have anyone want to testify on this substitute? Okay, looks like no. All right, Chair will accept a motion on the bill.
I move to report the bill.
All right, move to report the substituted bill. All in favor, say aye, or actually open the roll, please.
Wait.
Okay. You'll
Ayes
get to
9,
explain it on
no
the floor.
0, abstentions 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. members
Okay,
of the
you
committee.
got it.
Barbara, thank you.
All right, Senator Edwards, or D-Steph, or actually Edwards got here first, so. Senator Edwards.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is Senate Bill 1013. It has to do with a contaminant in the water, which I cannot pronounce. It's called PFAS. The idea here is the General Assembly asked the Department of Health whether or not this had to be reported. They came back with a conclusion until the EPA comes up with, the federal EPA comes up with a name and what to do about it. We should at least make sure the public is aware that this kind of contaminant is in the water. And Chris Pomeroy, who's a lawyer here in town, can explain it a whole lot better than I can, especially can explain even how to pronounce it, the chemical.
Okay, do we have a substitute?
I do have a substitute, yeah, there's a substitute.
Is there a substitute?
There's a substitute.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Mr. Pomeroy, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. The substitute now before you addresses the important public notification issue that Senator Edwards just described. The nature of the substitute is to really align the reporting mechanisms with those that exist for other chemicals under the Safe Drinking Water Act. We have a certain regime that's time-tested for testing and notifications. And what the bill does is pull in these 4 new chemicals of concern into the existing type of structure so that we don't have 2 competing and different reporting mechanisms for the new chemicals of interest. So with that alignment, we very much appreciate the senator working with us on the details of that, and we support the bill and would encourage its passage. Thank you.
Okay, all right, any questions? Okay, anyone want to testify in favor of the bill in the audience?
We have a participant on Zoom, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
let fly.
Mark, you may unmute and give your testimony now.
Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Mark Barker with the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League. I live in Roanoke, and the Western Virginia Water Authority is the source of my drinking water. It took nearly 3 years for the public to be notified after the West Virginia Water Authority tests showed that Gen X PFAS was present in our drinking water. The public was not even notified in a timely manner after the EPA came up with the health advisory in June. There's no requirement for the waterworks to inform the public when these chemicals are found in our drinking water. For us, it's simple. The public has a right to know what's in our drinking water, and we should be notified in a timely manner. While the substitute bill did remove some of that language for public notification, we still support SB 1013 with the hopes that one day the public will be considered and properly notified. We think Virginia can do better. We do thank Senator Edwards for filing this bill. We ask the committee for the support of SB 1013, and we thank you for this opportunity to comment.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, anyone else want to testify either in favor or in opposition?
There are no speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I don't see any opposition. Chair will entertain a motion.
I move to report the bill.
Okay, we have a motion, a second to report the bill. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 12, no 0.
Good work, John. Okay, that's it?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much.
Okay, all right, Senator D-Step.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your time today. We've got Senate Bill 1168, and we'll just name this the Give Them Time to Update Their Local Ordinances. So what basically happened in 2016 in the legislation, it gave it 30 days after, for the stormwater regulations, E&S regulations, gave it 30 days after the adoption of the regulations. During the stakeholder meetings to develop the regulation, localities said, hey, if you give us 30 days, that's not enough time for us to update our regulations and ordinances to put this into effect. So what they've come back and they've said is, hey, we really need time to do this. So this bill gives it time, gives the localities the time to update and promulgate their regulations and ordinances for the E&S bills from the 2016 bill, which has been in effect, or I'm sorry, which goes into effect in 2024. I'm happy to answer.
Okay, any questions
on
from the
this.
panel? You understand this?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
So this
Senator Mason.
This addresses the 9th enactment of the 10th enactment as amended by the 2nd enactment and is amended to reenact as follows. Can you help us with what we're talking about, sir?
Absolutely understand that, and I'm happy to call a friend and bring up an expert on this, but I'll tell you that the bottom line on this is localities can't get this based on the effective date. I'm sorry, based on the adopt the regulations based on the effective date and have time to update their ordinances to implement it. So I don't write it. I just have to try to explain it, and I know that the localities don't have time to write and implement the regulations in time.
Okay, I see Director of DEQ hovering
got
over
some
your
friends
shoulder.
here.
Mike, come forward and tell us what this is about.
Sure, thank you, gentlemen. So in 2016, the General Assembly said we should consolidate the erosion control regs and the stormwater regs. They never did it. They started. Okay, so I had a little temper tantrum, and we are going to finish it. And in March, we're going to public notice it, and it's going to go to the State Water Control Board in June. The reason we've got to get it consolidated is because they duplicate and overlap and contradict. So that's one of the reasons why we're having problems processing stormwater plans. At the same time, we have several other initiatives, writing a new stormwater manual to replace our 24-inch thick pile of stuff from 30-something years ago and make it all consistent. Also, we have a federal requirement to issue a new construction general permit effective July 1st, 2024. So what I'm trying to do is get every single piece of this program consistent with each other and effective the same day. It'll be the first time since I moved to Virginia in 1985. And I think it's a really good thing, and it's the way we're going to make this process work more effectively and efficiently. I'll stop talking.
Okay, so basically, your job is to consolidate all these stormwater regs and do that on or before July 1, 2024.
Right, and so some localities have reached out, Fairfax in particular, that we delay it this 1 year to make it effective that date, but I already wanted to, because if we don't make it effective the date we issue a new construction general permit, we're gonna have two sets of regs to deal with at different time periods.
I get that. Okay, Senator Stewart.
Mike, it's just pretty important to help us start reaching our TMDL goals under the.
100%. One of the increments is updating our model to match the Bay program's model.
So you need this?
Yes. It's an
Okay.
administration strongly supported, I should have said
Okay,
that.
very good. All right, anybody out in the audience want to testify on this bill, Senate Bill 1168? Chesapeake Bay? Peggy, where are you? No. Okay?
We're okay.
You're okay, all right. Anybody else have an opinion, yay or nay? Okay, got a motion to report. Motion and a second to report. Clerk, open the roll.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your time
Okay,
today.
good.
Ayes 12, no zero.
Ayes 12, no zero. Okay, we're moving pretty rapidly. All right, next, I want to get up, talk about the next great compromise, which involves watershed improvement. And Senator Hanger, I think that's your bill. Which bill is that? Oh, I'm sorry. Senator McPike is here before we dive into that. My bad. Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do have a substitute.
Okay.
Available to
What's the
committee
bill
on
number?
Senate Bill 1050.
1050. Move to adopt. Second. All in favor, say aye. Okay. So this is the coal ash bill.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
So the substitute before you, well, I guess if adopted, I guess it is.
It's adopted.
Okay, good. Is drawn to Planning District 8. What it does is two things. Says no application shall be approved unless a couple conditions are met. One of which is areas that the applicant at its expense shall, number one, in a municipal water supply, a service for such residential area and request service connections for residential properties in existence at the time of the permit application. So essentially twofold, where folks are not on municipal water supply within the 1 mile radius, they got to reach out and offer a water supply connection. And furthermore, section B of it, they got to send out writing just to make sure, because someone might say no. And so they've got an out in case someone denies a request to connect to the municipal water supply. But essentially, Mr. Chairman, we want to make sure there's obviously a coal ash issue within my area. And we want to make sure that right now there's ongoing tests and there's concern in the neighborhood. There's still hot spots that pop up occasionally with different heavy metals and other things. And they have to drill new wells, and it gets further and further out from the existing sites. And I don't know whether a new permit will be issued, but if one is done in the future, I want to make sure that they've got clean access to clean water. And that is the concern in the neighborhood. And this has been worked out between some parties, to my understanding, create some peace in the valley on this, and it's at least a backstop measure, independent of the entire DEQ process that's going on. But if something does move forward, they've got access to clean water.
Okay. All right, any questions for the senator?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Marson.
Yes, Senator McPike, the issue I ran into with one of the landfills, Prince William County, in your home county, I think it was Possum Point. You know, the bill speaks about the gradient.
That is removed.
That is removed? Okay. And because sometimes water seems to flow uphill and emerge up through springs and can be difficult. We had that situation there, and benzene showed up 2 weeks later, seemingly impossibly up the hill. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Anybody in the audience want to testify? Bill Murray, you're in a sprinter's crouch. Come forward.
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak on this bill, please raise your hand electronically.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Murray, Dominion Energy. We appreciate the senator working with us. He's very accurately described the bill, and we feel it's our view is it doesn't prejudge the DEQ permit. It doesn't prejudge any SCC review of costs, but it's a way to move forward potentially with a permit application.
Okay, very good. All right, any questions? Anyone want to testify? Anyone else? Anyone opposed?
There are no speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to report. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 12, no zero.
Okay, ayes 12, no zero, the bill passes. Good
Thank you, Mr.
work.
Chairman.
All right, Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Was this a subcommittee report?
This was a subcommittee, but it has some amendments.
Okay, why don't, while you stay there.
Senator Marsden has been
Senator
chair.
Marsden, you want to give us kind of what the subcommittee did on this bill? And what's the bill number?
It is
1271.
It is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a companion animal subcommittee meeting on the 26th, and we adopted a substitute at that point in time. Should we adopt a substitute and then deal with her amendments?
We will adopt this I have a motion, a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, substitute's in front of us, and it sounds like we're going to amend that. So why don't you go ahead and give us a summary, and then we'll hear from the senator.
Okay, and let me do that. This bill involves animal testing annual report, whistleblower protections created, animal welfare whistleblower reward fund established, civil penalty. Requires state and private facilities using animal test methods to annually submit on or before December 1st to the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services a report regarding the use of animals in biomedical or behavioral research for the preceding year. The bill also creates whistleblower protections for any violations of any animal care requirements and establishes the Animal Welfare Whistleblower Reward Fund to provide monetary rewards to persons who have disclosed any such violations. Finally, the bill provides that violations will result in a civil penalty of not less than $500 no more than $2,500. It was reported out of the subcommittee with the substitute 3-0, and I understand there are some amendments.
All right, Senator Boysko, tell us about the amendments.
Thank you. So I'd just like to clarify, the substitute basically makes it only a reporting bill. It takes out all of the whistleblower portions. It narrows the groups that need to submit the report.
Okay.
And just so you understand that, it is significantly different than we started.
Okay.
The amendments were negotiated over the weekend with higher ed institutions. This is really just a record-keeping bill. We just don't keep track, and since we send federal and state money to these institutions, this is just a record-keeping bill, basically.
So it requires an annual report.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I'd like to, I'm going to make a motion that we adopt the amendments to the substitute, so you
Second.
have a full bill.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the amendments to the substitute. This basically has to do with the annual reporting.
That's correct.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed, no. All right, so we have it in front of us in the correct format, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. We already had testimony, so we're not going to take further testimony on this, so the chair will entertain a
I'm
motion.
going to move that we report the bill, Mr. Chairman. I think
And
it's a helpful step forward.
And I'll second.
It's got to go to finance, so it's motion to report and refer to finance.
And a
Mr.
second.
Chairman,
Yeah, Senator Hanger.
I'm not calling for testimony, but since it's changed radically now and then an amendment right in front of us now, which appears makes it clear, I'd like to know if there was a consensus then from like the Farm Bureau and places like that this is okay.
Mr. Chair, Senator Hanger, it does not apply to any sort of an agricultural animal.
Right, it says that
Only
here,
to
but
our-
that's a part of the way that was worked out then.
Yes, sir.
right?
So
Okay.
it's really just our higher ed institutions, and we brought them to the table on Friday afternoon. We had a meeting. We have peace in the valley, and all opposition has been removed from those groups.
Right, just for those of you in the audience, animal testing facility does not include an agricultural operation defined under 3.2-300, which includes horseback riding, by the way. Did I mention that?
Yes, it does. Okay, which is
All
good.
right.
Need to remove whistleblower from the conversation, though.
Yes, Senator Hackworth.
Sorry to come late to the party, Senator Boysko. But so what about the reduction that was in there? Is that still in there? The plan to like reduce the animal?
That, Mr. Chair, Senator Hackworth, that has also been removed. So this is just a clear reporting bill, just letting us
reporting.
letting the Commonwealth and VDACs understand how many animals and basically that is basically it. The animal test methods and the number of animals.
It just requires a submitted annual report.
Yes, sir. They already do this to the USDA. This is
Okay.
something that they're already compiling these pieces of data.
Okay.
They do
All
have to, they do have to note the percentage of funds expended. That's-
Okay, all right, guys. This has already been heard at length in the subcommittee, and I understand it's different. We have a motion to report. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Okay, ayes 14, no zero. Bill
Thank you.
passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
You're correct.
And Senator Marsden, while we're on dogs and cats, why don't you bring the
All
next one
right,
up?
yes, Senate Bill 1230, which is Senator Stanley.
Right.
And this deals with animal testing facilities and their noncompliance with federal laws and regulations. It requires them to register, these facilities to register with the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and creates a number of fines and penalties for noncompliance with federal laws. And Senator Stanley turned himself in on this one and asked for the bill to be PBI'd.
Okay.
With a letter from the chairman, that would be you.
All right.
And to bring the stakeholders together to
Who's getting the
deal
letter?
with this bill. And Senator Stanley will put that letter together.
Right to like
for you.
Dear Abby, or who?
It is, but we want to bring everybody together.
Okay.
The facilities and our colleges and
somebody's gonna
universities
get a
were
letter.
nervous about it.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Hackworth.
I think the actual phrase was he wanted Senator Marsden
To write the
work
letter.
with- Yeah, so I think there's a passing of the football here, but I'm not ratting anybody out.
Okay.
Senator Stanley would
All right,
never do such a thing.
I think the words "pass by" and "definitely" were the operative phrase. Okay, all right. Do we have a motion to PBI the bill? Okay, we have a motion and a second to pass by and definitely Senate Bill 1230. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Ayes 14, no zero. Okay, now that we've gotten through some of the preliminaries, I want to take up Senate Bill 1129. That's Senator Hanger's bill on watershed implementation plan. And I hear rumblings of a compromise. For those of you that have followed this committee for the last few years, we had legislation 3 years ago which set timetables in place to achieve stream exclusion and some other goals of the watershed improvement plan. And I know there's been a lot of work between the agricultural community, the environmental community, and the community
Right.
to get together. So Emmett, what do we got here?
Okay, first, there's a substitute hot off the press, and I'd like to move that we adopt the substitute.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, substitute's in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The issue, as y'all well understand, because we stayed here way late one night, heard a lot of people talk about whether or not we were moving quickly enough with our incentivized programs with implementing best management practices to reach our goals under the watershed improvement plan. We acted, I think, in a very favorable way that night, and there's a lot of work that's been accomplished. However, COVID and a lack of funding early on and a lack of funding and planning to get technical training in place to support all of these practices that need to be in place early on have resulted in, if we're going to be realistic with our plan, that we need to have some other elements built into it. When I first talked to some of the agriculture interests, the Farm Bureau and Agribusiness Council and those and my neighbors, I was resistant to touching it. I didn't want to kick the can down the road, and I still don't want to kick the can down the road. But what we've arrived at here, I think, is a good mechanism for accountability and a commitment, if you will, that we're going to move forward and accomplish our watershed plan in a timely manner. I think it's widely recognized by all of the member states in the Chesapeake Bay. I serve on the Chesapeake Bay Commission, and now I was the new guy, and now I'm the one who's been serving the longest of any member right now currently serving on the Chesapeake Bay Commission, along with Senator Lewis. And Senator Lewis is has been very active with that as well for a number of years now, and is rotating soon into a chairmanship there, I guess. That comes up after year after next. Maybe, okay. Maybe. If he doesn't take a different turn in his life, which we all have to consider that in this election year, but we're all thinking about that. Off the subject. Here we go, back to the subject.
Back on track.
All right.
Enough rambling.
There has been, as you're well aware, a lot of people digging in saying, no, we don't want to change anything, and others saying we got to change things, and a compromise has been reached. Some of it that's incorporated in here, I thought of myself late Saturday night listening to bluegrass music. That's when I think best.
Okay.
But most of it came from the stakeholders working together, hashing it out back and forth from the environmental community and the agriculture community and how we do this. There are a number of things that need to happen, but what this bill does is it proposes to extend that target date of which was 2026 to 2028, not the 2030 that was originally proposed, but 2028. Now, to get there, it requires some things that we all collectively have to do. And this year, we're in good shape. We got resources, and we're going to fully fund our commitment to the Ag BMPs. There is a provision in here that says that if we don't, and that is an impediment to implementation, then there's a possibility that needs to be evaluated of extending that an additional year, but no later than 2030. Also, that evaluation by the Secretary of Natural Resources and the Secretary of Agriculture that we contemplated in 2026 would be moved to 2028. But there are other things that are added prior to that. And their decision is to whether we continue, that enough has been accomplished, that we're on target, we have the planning in place and enough practices in place to meet our goals. And if we do, they can say, okay, we're going to continue with the voluntary incentivized program, or it reverts to the more regulatory format, which we all at this point want to avoid as long as we can get there with the program and are convinced that it's working. It sets up a stakeholder group, though, Mr. Chairman, that's very integral to this bill that will be meeting and getting metrics. I wanted accountability, and I think that's where we're short now. We need a clear definement of how many, like for stream exclusion, how much stream exclusion is required, how much has already been accomplished, how much we have yet to do, and then some goals that would be established annually. I was thinking 20% a year, but that's not stated in here. It says there will be a stakeholder group, and there will be a report. And when the first report is generated, which is envisioned from a stakeholder group, for the first annual report, there'll be a preliminary report toward the end of this year to give us guidance for what we need to do if we need to take corrective action during this upcoming session in 2024, those of you that will be here. But that report, and then there's an annual report. The first annual report would be followed up by a requirement that the Secretary of Natural Resources and the Secretary of Agriculture review the metrics and determine whether or not we're on track. And if we are, that's a good thing. If they have recommendations on getting us there further, they would make those, or if we're in trouble, they need to point that out to us so we can take corrective action. There are a number of things that this bill does, and and I'll let others speak to it as far as the yeas and nays. I know you don't want to get into all the nuts and bolts, but I do want to point out several things that we, within the budget, are proposing to do collectively this year to make this realistic. Number one, you got to have data. So there's $1 million proposed in the budget for a suite of data enhancements for the Soil and Water Conservation District, so they can handle all this data in a timely manner and get it to us. There is additional positions for what we call boots on the ground to assist farmers in actually planning these projects and getting them implemented. There's $350,000 to be allocated for that. There's a provision for livestock and poultry waste BMPs that would be a part of this, and then there's additional $12 million that's being proposed above and beyond what we've now calculated to be full funding for additional incentives to get these priority projects done. A stakeholder group that, in addition to what's described in this bill, that is envisioned. Wetlands Restoration Initiative to include riparian stream buffers, which is an area where we are weak right now. That would be enhanced. All those items are within the budget. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I think with what we have in place now with full funding and with a document like this, if we can put it in place, we can do what we're supposed to do. And the important part is we'll know where success is because we're going to measure it in an appropriate way. And if there are those here in the stakeholder group that want to speak to this, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure you want to confirm that we have an agreement here.
Yeah, why don't we do this? I've got some questions, but Martha, why don't you come up first?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly want to thank the patron. I want to thank the environmental community. I think we've had a lot of dialogue over the last few weeks. I believe that this will now help farmers in soil and water conservation districts to be successful with all the tools in place. But as Senator Hanger said, all of our success is determinant on full funding. We are so appreciative that the General Assembly fully funded it last year, and that full funding continues this year. But we have to continue it if we're going to meet these goals. So I am very happy to say that we do have peace in the valley as far as I am concerned. I also want to give a shout out to Adrienne Catula with the Chesapeake Bay Commission staff for her work in kind of transcribing our conversations into this bill. So thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Question for Martha. Let me go with Monty and then Joe.
So you said we had full funding last year and full funding this year. What is that a set number? Is it a calculation?
I was about to ask the
How do we know what full funding looks
So
like?
quite a number of years ago, you all mandated that DCR come up with a stakeholder group, what's called the needs assessment. And that needs assessment looks at all of the conservation practices, how much it's going to cost. It's going to look at the average cost per practice. And the long story short is that gives you the number. That is how we know that we have full funding. What that needs assessment shows is that if we prioritize certain practices, we can achieve those nutrient load reductions by 2028, and we can achieve all of the nutrient reductions by 2030. And so I believe this puts us on track to getting all of that accomplished.
And that's numbers laid out in Title 10.1-2128.1?
Yes.
I see nodding heads. Okay. Senator Morrissey, did you have a follow-up?
I have a few questions.
Sure, go ahead.
I used to have a friend in the House, Dave Albo, that said, explain it to me so that a 10-year-old can understand it. And here's the 10-year-old version. Isn't the whole idea behind this to prevent fecal material from going into our rivers and streams from farmers' animals, and we want to protect that from happening? Would you not agree that's our goal?
I think that there are many nutrient loads in addition to bacteria, and that all of these conservation practices have been built with research, and now that we have the tools in place to implement them.
Okay. So I'm looking at this bill, and it talks about, because you talk about peace in the valley, it talks about, in lines 37 and 38, convening a stakeholder advisory group. 41, developing a process, reporting your results. And then you get to the heart of it, and it talks about assuming, though, that reasonable progress has been made. So tell this committee right now what streams have been protected thus far. Give me a list of the streams that we have protected so far.
I think that this is an overall, all of the streams that flow into the Chesapeake Bay, and that is calculated on an annual basis, which DEQ reports to EPA, and that gets put into a model. And so that report shows us how many nutrients we have reduced, and all of the streams that flow into the Chesapeake Bay.
Follow-up question. Tell me the streams that you've identified that you are protecting right now.
Okay, hold on.
Not the Mr. Chair, I want to understand this. I understand the overall nutrient level is important, but you had there was a goal to identify streams, Senator, and that's what I want to see happening. What streams thus far have been identified as those that we're going to protect?
Could I speak?
Or Senator Hanger.
Okay, I'll be glad to speak to that. That's a part of what will be in the report. There are individuals that at Soil and Water Conservation in DCR, to name specifically Darrell Glover, James Martin, who work with this data, I don't have a list in front of you right now, but I can assure you there have been several $100 million allocated, and there are, I don't even want to throw out a number now, but we're talking literally, I think I'd be comfortable in saying hundreds of miles of fence that have been installed. But we don't have a precise number, and I don't have a list. But what I'm telling you, this legislation will require that information be presented to us. I've been on many projects where I've witnessed, where an owner, operator put in 4 or 5 miles of fence and put in alternative water sources. And that's what we're at. And actually, I'm very pleased. We just can't quantify it. And it's a part of what this is aiming at.
All right.
Can I ask one final short question?
One final short question.
Thank you.
Then we got a lot of important people
I
who
know,
need to
I know.
speak.
In the bill, can you point me to any area in this bill where it identifies what specific metrics or progress has to be made during this delay? In other words, so that we can come back a year from now or 2 years now, if anybody asks to delay it again, and we can say, well, this is what they said they would do, and determine whether they did it. Is there an area in this bill that talks about the specific progress that has to be made during the delay?
And again, I would answer, Mr. Chairman, that not in the bill itself, but it's a mechanism for getting us there with the data improvements, with an inventory. And one of the methods you might notice on the stakeholder group, we've added the Commissioner of Revenues. Well, why would we add Commissioner of Revenues? The Commissioner of Revenues administer the land use program. And it seems to me, I've had some conversation, that's a good point to gather some of this information. You got cattle on your land, that's why you qualify for land use. You check the box. Have you fenced your cattle out of the stream, as an example? Accumulating more data, and we don't have all of that data right now.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Chair.
Yep, no, you're welcome. Peggy, come forward and talk to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Peggy Sander for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in support of the bill substitute.
Okay.
It took a long time for me to get to that position. I want to thank the senator for his patience and sensitivity in working through these issues. I was reminded today that this year, 2023, is 40 years to the year from the signing of the first Chesapeake Bay Agreement by then Governor Chuck Robb. That agreement was about a page long, and it kind of said, we've got a lot of problems to work out. We're going to work together. No metrics, nothing. It just was like, we're going to do it. Now, 40 years later, many Bay agreements later, we actually have made some progress, but I would say a key part of that is that we have had the addition of research, we've had the addition of program development, we have real metrics. This problem today, this issue today that we're addressing, addresses the agricultural program, which right now I would say is what we need as a Commonwealth to be looking at in terms of bay restoration. About 90% of the nutrient and sediment reductions we still need to make need to come from our ag programs. Okay. Wastewater, with your help and their work, have made a huge improvement. We need to transfer that focus and the money to get there to our ag programs. I think this bill in its current form will help us get there. It's not just a free pass of 2 more years, which is kind of how I approached it at the outset. It's not just that. I think there are requirements in here to develop metrics. Honestly, they need to be developed in a cooperative way. As that first Bay Agreement said, we need to work together to get to metrics, to identify which streams, what part of the streams, and so forth. So that's the first thing. There are requirements in this substitute bill to develop the metrics that need to be met on a year-by-year basis over the next several years. I'm very happy about that. Now, a big challenge from our perspective is the requirement of full funding, which is built into this bill.
Right.
We have been concerned about that at the outset. You all will remember in the history of the universe, maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but probably not, we've had full funding 1 year last year. We might have it this year. That's terrific.
Right.
But it will be important, and I we'll probably come back and talk with you about this going forward. We need, as a Commonwealth, to figure out how to make sure that we get full funding for this program. Yes, for these practices, but for the ag work we need to do going forward. Is that a new funding program with some kind of guaranteed funding? Is it a renewed commitment along the lines potentially that we could learn from wastewater? We'll work together, I hope, on that opportunity. But what we don't want to do is to have the lack of funding derail the progress on these practices and on our ag commitments in general. We are far behind where we need to be, but we are not out of the running if we can just continue to keep our foot on the pedal. Thank you all for listening to this. Thank you all for your support of this program. And thank you, Senator, for your commitment to the agricultural community and to the conservation community. We know it's deep-rooted, as it is for all of you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Peggy. Don't go far away, because I got a couple sort of questions, and I know other people do. Come forward. We don't need to have a long lecture at this point, so just tell us who you are, who you represent, and what
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Bill Street with the James River Association, and appreciate the Senator's leadership and his work to get this bill in a position that we can support it as well. We have just recently ramped up the Ag Cost Share Program to the level that it needs to be. We need to sustain that level to reach our goals, and this bill provides a framework to make sure that we can move forward as quickly as possible, but also have the accountability.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Cattle.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate the work that's been done on both sides of this. And with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, we have the same goals. Most of you were here a couple years ago, and I was here, as you said, a big crew. We're invested in this, and we know there's a plan, there's a map. There's a map to get there, and we're going to continue to work to get to the end of that route and do what we need to do. There are many streams that are protected by this program, and I'm a cattle farmer myself. I put $75,000 into this program in the last couple of years. I'm protecting several streams right around that lead into the Lake Anna. So we are doing it, we're moving along, and we're going to get there. But I just want to say thank you to the Senator for the bill, and we continue to work. I've already signed up with my soil and water district, who's speaking next to do the next phase. I've only done half my farm, but we're going to do the other half. And I'm just a small cattleman, but we're committed to this, and thank you.
Got it.
Mr. Chairman, Kendall Tyree with the Virginia Association of Soil and Water Conservation Districts. Again, echo a huge appreciation to the patron, to Adrian Catula, for the stakeholder discussion to get us to this point today, and for the significant recognition of our technical assistants and the bill and the field staff that implement the practices that work with our farmers. So I'll stop there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, Brad Copenhaver, representing the Virginia Agribusiness Council. I don't think I have a lot to add based on the previous speakers. Just want to thank Senator Hanger. Finally, I think at this point, we're all recognizing that farmers and our ag community are full partners in this, and we really appreciate that and all the support that the General Assembly has given. So thank you.
Okay, yep.
Hi, Mark Frondorf, Shenandoah Riverkeeper. Two things I'm concerned about with this piece of legislation is that inflation's running about 5 to 7% right now, and what's full funded today may not be full funded in 3 or 4 years. And how is that going to be addressed? And then the second issue that I want to bring up is an environmental justice issue, and that Page County, for example, has about 14.5% of folks living below the poverty line. National level is about 11%. A lot of people don't have access to swimming pools and community pools and things of that nature, and they use the river for their swimming hole, and it's important. And so I'm very much concerned about that. 2 years ago, there was a 52.5-mile harmful algal bloom on the North Fork of the Shenandoah, and if it occurred on the South Fork, it would have been a tremendous negative impact, not just on people, but also on businesses and the economy, the recreational outfitters, the B&Bs, the restaurants. And so the General Assembly recognized that last year when they put in place a $2 million harmful algal bloom study on the Shenandoah and a $1 million study for Lake Anna. And so the problem is real. It's not going away. And when it's being delayed, the likelihood of further harmful algal blooms, it's only going to increase in nature.
Okay, let me ask you this. You're talking about people swimming in the river. We're talking about stream exclusion. So.
That's right,
Are we on
but
the same page here?
No, what we're concerned about are cattle herds in the river.
I understand that.
Yeah, and so you have an increased bacteria load, and you also have increased nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, that help to kickstart
And you're saying
harmful
that
algal
flows
blooms.
into the Shenandoah and then causes
Yeah,
algal?
for the legislation, it's rivers and perennial streams.
Okay, all right, got it, thank you.
You know, Mr. Chairman, Chris Pomeroy, representing the Virginia Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies. Take just a half a moment of your time we're sort of in an odd position in the bill, and I appreciate very much the patron and the substitute working with us here. The bill in the first paragraph mentions point sources as part of the calculus on the trigger provision. And arise as much as anything to say our understanding of what the bill does not do in the municipal wastewater sector. We've made a lot of progress, as you've heard.
Right.
But we do have 4 years of major construction still underway to get to the deadline, the 2025 deadline, under the ENR Certainty Program, the bill.
2025, you got 2 years, not 4 years.
Yeah, it's going by fast, very fast.
Okay.
January 1, 2026, I guess, is the official deadline, and that legislation from 2 years ago. You'll see in the third enactment clause, there's a provision clarifying that this bill, despite the mention of point sources in the first paragraph, does not change our already tight limits. That was very
Okay.
important to us. We appreciate that
So
clarification.
point source has not changed?
It's not changed.
Not changed.
And we're neutral on the bill with that recognition.
Okay, all right, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Eric Paulson with the Virginia State Dairymen's Association. We appreciate the work of the stakeholders. We're in support of the bill.
Okay. All right, here's a couple questions from me. And I'm glad, and I trust Peggy, I trust the environmental community to kind of, in a lot of ways, address our concerns. We're moving the deadline back 2 years. That's effectively what we're doing. And I guess my question would be, what are we getting in return? And I understand we got a stakeholder group, which I appreciate, but you know what? In 2020, we had a stakeholder group. I feel like every bill has a stakeholder group. What's going to be different this time?
I will just, Mr. Chairman, I'll just briefly state, it will be accountability. On the first iteration of this, I put in an enactment clause, okay, we're going to verify that we did 20% year one, 20% year two, so on and so forth. It's built into here, but it's to be developed. So it's an accountability through the metrics to get there based on the funding to do it. And I, quite frankly, we're not, some people are talking about the overall water quality improvement plan and why we're not going to reach our 2025 goals. I haven't given up on that. I'm an active participant in just with the point source with the wastewater. We're spending collectively between the state and local governments well over $1 billion in further enhancing our point discharge.
Right.
We need to have that same level of commitment in assisting with what's going on across the area, because it's not that the farmers are bad actors, it's just that they are the people there where the streams are flowing that's flushing these nutrients off of their fields and into the rivers. So accountability is what you're getting for Mr. Chairman, and assurance from the players that it will be monitored and we will produce results, verifiable results.
Okay. Senator Favola.
Thank you, Senator Hanger. It says that you're going to achieve specific metrics, so you don't have those metrics developed. So what guarantee do we have that the metrics will really be aggressive and meaningful? I mean, accountability is good, but if we're having accountability for small steps.
Some of that information, as indicated to Senator Morrissey, is available, but it's not like with a lot of data. We have one of the proposals is an enhancement of the data handling process, which is going to cost us a little bit of money to enable the soil and water conservation districts to produce this data in a way that we understand. Right now, we know what we've done, but I don't know how much we have yet to do, quite frankly. And so it needs to be identified. There are people, and I think the expert that I look to at DCR is James Martin. He's a person who has his pulse on this. So that's we need to identify that with metrics, and we have a plan here to get it. In the stakeholder group, if we monitor it closely, we'll be capable of doing that.
Okay. All right. Senator, this is kind of where I am on this, and like I said, I trust people that are smarter than me, and the people that have blessed this, I trust them, okay? That's just how it works in this building. There was a president, when I was a kid, who used to say, trust but verify, okay? Remember him? And I would like these to be verified. And so what I'm probably going to do is, I'm going to vote to get this through this committee. I'm going to put on a floor amendment. I want the actual numbers being reported to this committee with miles of stream exclusion and percentage of what we've gotten done. I want to see numbers, and maybe something we can look at the Senate Finance Retreat, or maybe but before the session, because the metrics are pretty critical. And
I
wanna
believe
make
that's
that-
doable, at least in an approximate format by the first report. So if you
Okay.
want to put something on there, we
And I don't know if
can go for it.
DCR is going to keep track of that, but I will personally write that enactment, because I want to see those numbers.
Yes.
Senator Morrissey.
Senator, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your comments. There's two reasons that I'm going to support this bill. Number one, your track record on your good stewardship of the environment, and I believe you're sincere. And Senator Stewart had approached me earlier and told me, he said, Joe, we need the time to get it done. And I know what his track record is on trying to clean up, for example, wastewater in the James River due to the combined sewer overflow. So for those reasons, I'm going to support it, but I think the chairman is right. There has to be some modicum of verification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Senator Stewart, or Lewis.
I just, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, as someone who was peripherally made aware of the ins and outs of this and had some discussions with both sides, and particularly Senator Hanger, I just want to assure the committee that there was nobody asleep on the switch during these negotiations, and that everybody is fully committed, the agricultural folks, the Bay Foundation. This compromise was hard fought, well thought out, and fully vetted, so rest easy.
Okay. Senator Mason.
So, when I see the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, James River Association stand up and have come to the table with y'all and all agreed, makes me feel a lot better. But if you want to talk about track record, mine on this isn't real good. About 3 years ago, I got chopped up and spread about the fields by the farmers when we tried to do something. And I think what you see is Senator Hanger, and mine barely failed, like 1 to 14, I believe. Just barely.
Yeah.
And so here we are now from that bill talking about spreading out, going a little further. And so the metrics are key, but at that time, my talk track was 68% of the work still needs to be done from the agricultural community. What did Ms. Sanders say? 90. And the concern today is the calculation, and Martha made me feel good about there's a calculation. We're not just pulling numbers out of the sky. But the calculation falls $10 million below the number we need at any point, and we just tack on another year. And so I'm going to support it, because I can't tell you how much I appreciate the two sides coming together and trying to find something to work. But there's just this painful feeling of deja vu all over again, sitting right here from where we came 3 years ago, that we can't afford to do again. So, sorry.
Okay, I think we've talked our way through this. Chair will entertain a motion. Okay, we have a motion to report the substitute. Does this need to go to finance? No, I see a head shaking. And like I said, I am going to have a floor amendment just to tighten up those metrics. All right.
That's agreeable.
But we'll send it through. Clerk, open the roll, please. That's fine.
Senator Favola. Ayes 12, no 0, abstentions 2.
Okay. Good work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have two other compromise bills here if you want to handle those now.
Go ahead. You're on a roll.
Okay. And hopefully we can move these quickly. Senate Bill 959 deals actually with nutrient trading outside of the Chesapeake Bay area. As you're aware, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we've dealt with non-point trading within the Bay and also what we call the southern rivers. This bill, and I do have a substitute, Mr. Chairman, if we could distribute that, I would move that we adopt the substitute.
Move and second, we adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Please distribute the substitute. Go ahead.
Okay, the essence of this bill is that short of a good way of figuring how credits would be allocated in the southern rivers, they use basically a takeoff on the calculation that is being performed in the Chesapeake Bay region. And the bill, as it was originally drafted, would have put a specific measurement criteria in place. the compromise that was reached, I think probably the best way is, it's a short sentence here. It basically gives the director of DEQ the ability to institute or substitute a delivery factor that's based on scientific and technical information appropriate for tributaries located outside the Chesapeake watershed as an alternative to any delivery factor derived from the application of the Chesapeake Bay Program watershed model. Now, this is important to people that are doing projects in the southern rivers, which is important. When we allocate money to the Chesapeake Bay, we also put a significant amount into our southern rivers, just for the reason that the gentleman with the river keepers explained. The bay is one thing, but if you're swimming in the river by your house, you want it clean too, whether it goes into the bay or not. So this is what this does, allows the discretion of the director to come up with a calculation, if you will, for how much credit should be allocated in the southern rivers or the non-Chesapeake Bay areas. And I do have people here that could speak to it if you need. Shannon, and we got the
okay, go ahead, Shannon.
director here.
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak on this bill, please raise your hand electronically.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Shannon Varner with Traum and Pepper here on behalf of mitigation bankers. Appreciate the senator bringing this. As you've discussed in your retreat and you've heard a number of times, there have been concerns about credit shortages, supply, and assuring that there is a steady supply of credits to meet demand. And we, as an industry, have been looking at the different aspects and how to improve that. And there are a number of things going on, and this is one of them. We identified that in 2016, we did use the Chesapeake Bay Program model to develop the mechanism for certifying credits from things like stream restoration in the southern rivers. The problem is we brought over a factor that relates just to this Chesapeake Bay and is not appropriate for the southern rivers. This just unties DEQ's hands from having to use that method and allows us to bring a method forward or DEQ to bring a method forward that they then approve as being appropriate for the southern rivers based on the best available scientific and technical information available.
Okay.
And just help with supply and cost.
All right, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be curious to know from DEQ if they've got the manpower to come up with these calculations, because it seems to me that's a lot of work somebody's going to have to do, and do they have the staff to do that?
A great question. It's going to be tight, but it's something we probably have to do. So I understand the problem and I understand what happened. I wish we had a whole bunch of people just ready to jump on this, but we're going to work on it. But it is definitely an issue. I was hoping to potentially get Virginia Tech to help us a little bit. We are working on the Virginia runoff reduction model with them, so we've had some preliminary talks about what they could do for us in the rest of their state.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stewart.
So there's no timeline, Mike, on this?
No, I'm hoping I can do it next summer, but I'm not promising in this legislation to do that.
And you're not asking for an additional staff?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Okay, anybody in the audience or on Zoom have a comment?
There are no speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
Positive or negative? Okay, we have a motion and a second to report. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Okay, ayes 14, no zero. The bill passes and moves along. And that doesn't need to go to finance, does it? No. Okay.
No. Okay.
All right, Emmett, you're down to your last strike.
And this is a negotiated bill as well. This is Senate Bill 1122, Open Space Preservation. I have a particular, it's not a constituent, but someone that has a business that focuses their work or their effort mostly on small working farm type operations. They work across the board, all across the state. But in this instance, they were proposing a method for getting funding from the Open Space Lands Preservation Trust Fund to a nonprofit private, not through the normal process with the VOF. When I introduced this, I got two concerns. One came from the Attorney General's office. It said my bill was unconstitutional Okay? Then the second one came from the VOF and said, this is terrible, we can't do this, okay? You know what? The Attorney General's office, I think it was, and I wish I had the name of the person there because she was extremely helpful. And if it will require substitute, I would ask that we adopt the substitute, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, move we adopt substitute, distribute the substitute. Motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. All right.
All right, Mr. Chairman, and what the Attorney General's office worked out for it was a method that this could flow within the language there. There were a couple of things that had to be accomplished. We had some faulty language. The essence of it is it creates a method where this funding could go to a private entity, but it would have to go through steps as we do in other areas, and it would have to be then with, and I coordinated this with the head of our VOF, which they do tremendous work. Brett, I'd have to thank Brett tremendously for helping with this rather than telling me we can't do it. And that's the conversation we had. It will have to be co-held by a local government, any easement that is done in this manner. And that's essentially it, without me just exactly reading what it says, but this deal was struck while I was sitting on the floor earlier this morning. I actually was sitting in the Finance Committee when this deal came together by text message. So I appreciate the work of other people that put this together because it was a non-starter initially. It had a good goal, and that's what we're accomplishing here, in the ability to work specifically with some of these other farmers that may have small working farms. Not that the VOF is ignoring them, it just they I think, and Brett said, you know, that they can use help in this area, and they would not want to restrict this effort to just things that they could do. So this creates a mechanism for these funds to cover the costs associated with providing these easements. You're doing surveys, you're paying contract people, you've got to file deeds and all kinds of things that some of y'all may be involved with.
Okay, very good. All right, anybody got any questions for Senator Hanger? Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Emmett, typically where does this grant money go?
Beg pardon?
Typically, what would this grant money be used for?
The grant money would be used specifically to assist the landowner with the costs, like deed preparation, survey, those types of things, title things to actually effect the easement. And it's typically handled through grants from the Open Space Lands Preservation Trust Fund that are handled through VOF, and that's our safety blanket there because we know and trust them. In this instance, we're modifying it, and here I go. I was looking at the old bill. I couldn't even recite the language to you.
Mr. Chairman.
And I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
I guess what I meant was
new language.
before your bill, what was this grant money typically used for before the bill you brought today?
Beg your pardon?
Before you brought the bill.
Before I brought the bill, if a landowner is doing it, it's going to be on his tab for the small farm.
Right, I'm sorry, I'm not expressing myself very well. Typically, the Open Space Lands Preservation Trust Fund is used for what purpose? Today, before we vote on your bill.
Oh, if someone wants to put a conservation easement on their property, and it's into a slightly different category than some of the others, but it's, well, I guess I should say, rather than this money coming from credits, which you know, some of the small working farms, even though the credit can be transferable, are not much into that. There's a conservation fund, a trust fund, and these funds then are used to basically pay for these. Sometimes they're voluntary easements that are put in place, but you have to go through the mechanism with the costs associated with the deed preparation, the survey, working with one of these companies that approve these. So that's where it is. And the money currently flows from the Conservation Trust Fund through the VOF, and they're the one that distributes the grants back. And they tend to be larger projects, although over the last couple of years, they've created a program called VAULT, which does assist a bit in this area. But with the compromise that we reached from the recommendations of the Attorney General's office, and then with the VOF themselves saying that as long as it was co-held by a local government, they were totally comfortable with it. and,
Okay.
would welcome the additional assistance.
Okay, I think we've kind of talked this one out. Anyone else have questions? All right, anyone in the audience want to speak, or Zoom?
If anyone on
I
Zoom would
see
like to
someone
speak
coming
on this
forward.
bill, please raise your hand electronically.
Brett, sir, she can help me.
Yes, ma'am.
Here, we got somebody
No.
here, okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Stephanie Talon with Virginia Farm Bureau. We support conservation easements as a tool for landowners who are interested in protecting their working farms and forest land, and believe additional options for those interested in doing so is a good thing, and for that reason, we support the bill.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right, Chair will entertain a motion. Okay, motion and second to report the bill. Open the roll.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Thank you. I guess what I'll do is I have to run upstairs to chair another subcommittee in health. And so I'm going to turn the gavel over to Senator Marsden, and y'all take it away.
All right, stay close, Richard.
All right.
Senator.
Did staff leave it? Did he leave it? I don't believe he left it with me. Did he? Give it to me.
Somebody gave me a proxy, can I give it to somebody else or myself?
That's tricky. That is tricky. You can't really transfer a proxy. Let me. What's that? He wants to transfer the proxy. To me, for Senator Peterson? Okay. All right, so, let's see, how do I do that here on the big machine?
Give me 1 second.
And proxy to, okay?
All right.
I think I got it. Good. All right, here we go. And Barbara, you had a different issue with proxy that was.
I can't just give it to somebody else.
And you need to leave?
No.
Yeah, I suppose.
She can. Okay. Yeah, then that's, I don't think there's anything you can do with that other than wait for his return. All right. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Have we dealt with, I missed the first part of the meeting, excuse me, did we deal with Senator Cosgrove's bill? Yes. Okay. So next, Senator Lewis, you have a couple things for us?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, you certainly can.
Which one do you want to start with, Mr. Chairman? Does it make any difference to you?
Take your pick.
Okay. Let me see what I've got here. Well, we'll take them in the order that I have them in my little binder here. Senate Bill 1178.
Senate Bill 1178. You may proceed.
And there is a substitute.
We have a motion on the substitute. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second on the substitute. We have a motion to second on the substitute. All in favor, say aye.
And then I
Opposed?
believe there may be.
Substitutes before us.
There's an amendment to the substitute.
And now we
All right.
have an amendment to the substitute. Why don't you tell us
And there's
about the
amendment, is there
substitute?
amendment to the substitute?
Senator Lewis?
Yeah. I'm trying to phone a friend here, but my friend has left the room. Isn't that always the way it is? Yeah.
Your phone a friend left?
Yeah, there's supposed to be an amendment to the substitute. Well, you want to pass by that?
Yeah, why don't you take that by temporarily and let's move on to one of your other bills.
All right, Mr. Chairman, the next one I have is 1365.
Senate Bill 1365. Yeah, hold on, we'll find out. There is a substitute for that. Do we have a motion on the substitute?
So moved.
We have a motion, a second on the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Substitutes before us.
All right, Mr. Chairman, 1365, as it appears before you in the substitute, is significantly different than as it was introduced. This bill does not create new law or change the existing permitting or regulatory structure. This emphasizes and clarifies the existing regulatory scheme for material recycling centers and the required handling of facility-generated waste residue. Essentially what this does, to cut to the chase, Mr. Chairman, is for these material recycling centers, they're permitted by DEQ, and essentially what we're saying is disposal of the waste from them is governed by their DEQ permit and cannot be governed by, or should not be, will not be governed by local ordinance. That's it in a nutshell.
It just puts DEQ in the superior position.
Yes.
All right.
And we had thought, it had been thought that that was the case to begin with, Mr. Chairman, but apparently there appears to have been some confusion at some levels that was the case.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Obenchain.
Unless there's any objection, I move to report.
Second. We have a motion and a second to report the bill. If you don't mind, if we could just ask if there's any questions from the panel, and if not, anyone here to speak in favor?
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak on this bill, please raise your hand electronically. There are no speakers, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anyone opposed? All right, we have a motion and a second to report the bill. Could you, Clerk, could you open the roll?
Senator Favola for Senator Morrissey. Ayes 11, noes 1, abstentions 1.
Ayes 11, noes 1, abstentions 1, and Senator Lewis, Senator Peterson abstains due to a
Yes,
client issue.
I understand.
Okay.
Yes.
And next, I think you have
1392,
1392.
I believe, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, this deals with floodplain management regulations and the state agency compliance with those regulations. This bill, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I think we have a
Is there a
substitute on
substitute?
that. Yep.
Oh, okay. Have a motion on the substitute? Second?
There is no substitute?
We don't have a substitute.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
you're back to your original bill.
All right, back to the original. This bill will help balance Virginia's need to comply with the National Flood Insurance Program. The code of, that all state agencies adhere to either a state development standard or local government's ordinance standard. There is a substitute. Never mind. Back to the substitute.
You have a second? We have a motion and a second to accept the belated substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Substitute before us.
Now, Mr. Chairman, the substitute bill will balance Virginia's need to comply with the National Flood Insurance Program. It amends 10.1-603 of the code to codify the requirement established in Executive Order 45 that all state, that was under the Northam administration, that all state agencies adhere to either a state development standard or local ordinance when the agencies are conducting development activities in a floodplain. Currently, state agencies must abide by local floodplain ordinances, which creates a patchwork of requirements that can vary by locality. The bill, the substitute in front of you, will require the establishment of a statewide development standard by June 30th, 2023. Statewide standard would be developed by representatives from the Secretaries of Administration, Commerce and Trade, Education, Natural Resources, Homeland Security, Public Safety, Transportation, as well as the Chief Resilience Officer. And this is an administration bill.
Senator Lewis, that's a very tight time frame. June 30th of
They picked the
this
number.
year. That's theirs?
They picked the number.
Okay.
I'm sorry, September. I'm sorry, September.
Oh, okay, there you go.
I had a little bird tell me it's actually September.
So, all right, September, and that's what's reflected in the bill.
Yeah.
Okay. Very
And,
good. Questions from the committee?
Matt Wells is here too, if there are any.
Is there any opposition, Senator Lewis?
No, I think he's run the trap lines on this, and I think we're all okay.
Okay.
Move to report.
Let's ask the audience. Let's go through we may have somebody on Zoom, you never know. Anybody here to speak in favor of the bill?
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak on this bill, please raise your hand electronically.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just very quickly, bill appears to be in good shape.
Hi, Mr. Committee and members of Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mary Carson Stiff, Wetlands Watch. We just want to thank the Senator and the administration for their willingness to work with us on the language of this bill, and we're in full support and think it's wonderful to have the support of the executive order being codified in the code. Thank you.
And that is my nickname around here, Mr. Committee.
I am Mr. Committee.
No, it's not.
Don't tell him.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Committee, members of the committee, Matt Wells, DCR, we do support the bill. Thank the patron for it.
Thank you so much. Is there any opposition to the bill? Anything on Zoom?
There are no speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion and a second to report. All in favor? Vote aye. Opposed, nay.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Ayes 14, no 0. The bill reports. And Senator Lewis, do you have another?
All right, we'll go ahead. Yeah, I think I can go ahead with 1178, Mr. Chairman.
Senate Bill 1178.
Yeah.
Folks, turn your attention to that.
I had understood that there needed to be an amendment to the substitute, but I'm told now that may not be the case. And if it turns out to be the case, we'll do it on the floor. This bill, Mr. Chairman, is a collaborative effort between Appalachian Power and DEQ regarding right-of-ways for gravel access road for construction of electrical transmission lines and subsequent grid repair. So stormwater regs require or apply to those projects. When you're building a simple access road when you're doing a new transmission line or when you're doing something for maintenance, they apply. And so what that often leads to is you have to tear up the road after you finished using it, even though you're probably going to need one again for future work and future access. So what they've done is work together to come up with some requirements. The original bill would have codified a straight-out exemption for stormwater permit requirement for those particular projects. However, the substitute that's in front of you will provide for the inclusion of specific guidelines for building electric utility gravel access roads that will satisfy stormwater management requirements. So APCO has worked with DEQ on this extensively. That's how the substitute got in front of you. And I guess Mike is still here, and John is here with APCO if you all have any questions.
So it becomes more preventive than it does reactive. Is that?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of the bill?
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak on this bill, please raise your hand electronically.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, John Morris at Appalachian Power. And the senator described it accurately. In its original form, it provided for an exemption from stormwater requirements that caught the attention of the DEQ. And I think previously Director Rollband had talked about the process through which the DEQ is negotiating and putting together a stormwater handbook. And now the bill, the committee substitute before you simply says, instead of an exemption, we will be part of that process. And all utilities now in the committee substitute will be able to provide technical specifications to allow them to build roads and yet still be compliant with the water quantity regs that are in the stormwater handbook. So no exemption, just building roads in compliance with the stormwater regs. And I do want to thank Director Rollband and the staff.
Those are already in place?
Yes. Well, they're in place and they're being negotiated now. In the interim, you'll see in the committee substitute, there are some interim standards that take from the guidelines that are presently existing for an interim standard, stormwater standard. Those were taken from the DEQ's guidance documents. But going forward, we will negotiate as part of the overall DEQ process to create that unified stormwater handbook.
Yeah, so there's no get-out-of-jail-free card temporarily while these things are
There is
finally
not.
negotiated?
The bottom half of the committee substitute says that we still got to follow some rules, but we do appreciate, again, Director Rollband and the staff for kind of working through those technical issues with us.
Okay, very good. Senator Favola, did you have a question? No. Okay. Senator Favola's good. Did we ask the audience yet on this? I think we did. Yes. So we have a motion to report. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Hanger seconds. All right. Open the rolls.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Ayes
Thank you.
14, no
Mr.
0.
Chairman, I think
The
that's
bill
it for me.
reports. Senator Stewart, I believe you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. 1396 is the first in line. Mr. Chairman,
1396.
that's what I have. I'm sorry, 14.
Yeah, I don't see a 1396. I see a
1438.
1438 and a
I'm
1501.
sorry.
Do you have two bills?
Yes, I do.
Those are the two, 1498 and
Yes, 14, I
1501.
apologize, it was mislabeled on my folder.
You have 1501. Aha.
And 1501, correct. 1438, first, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this does, it prevents governments of a foreign adversary or non-government person of a foreign adversary from acquiring agricultural land in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm sorry, there is a substitute, which makes some changes
right.
to it.
Do we have the substitute?
I
We have a
apologize.
second on the substitute?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Substitute's before us.
And, Mr. Chairman, this is, and there's some reporting requirements aligned with this, but that's the meat of the bill. This becomes a real issue, and you all know that I'm not someone who ever votes for protectionist bills. I never do that, but this is a security issue more than anything. We have very sensitive assets in Virginia. I particularly got the Dahlgren Naval Base, which does some of the most sophisticated work in the world. Senator from Accomack, Scott Wallops Island. There are other areas where we just shouldn't allow foreign adversaries to purchase the land surrounding that very important asset. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. I've been watching Mark Warner for the past 10 years, working on the issue of the Chinese government that's stealing intelligence from our universities, the research, the things that they're working on, and using it against us, quite frankly. Warner and Spanberg are also at the federal level working on something very similar to this from the same concerns. And so what this bill does is it puts a halt on that for now, and it gives us reporting requirements so that we can get ahead of this before it's too late. And that's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
I assume, Senator Stewart, that the Secretary of Commerce keeps a list of those who are defined as foreign adversaries, and it's updated?
We use a definition, yes, and that's the definition we use is for the Secretary of Commerce, those people who for a period of time have been designated as a foreign adversary.
Yeah, and I know this isn't, our usual areas of expertise here around foreign adversaries, but, in that regard, does this list, do you know, change very often? I mean, is it one of these things that's in constant flux? People
Mr.
coming
Chairman,
and going off the
I
list?
do not know, but logic would dictate to me that may change from time to time, that, sometimes we have allies, sometimes we have adversaries. I'm sure there are a number that have remained adversaries for a length of time. In particular, we have some concerns about land that may be purchased around these sensitive assets, and this is just an abundance of caution to make sure that we don't jeopardize the integrity of those assets.
And do we have a way of defining what the distance and,
Yes, I got to look through the substitute and determine that. No, we don't.
So.
Hold on a second. Well, actually, this is any agricultural land. We don't want the adversaries buying anything. But we're particularly concerned about the ones who are purchasing around assets. I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking of about your question.
So even land way back up in a holler is it just applies to any agricultural land? Does it have anything to do with, I know that there's prime and there's non-prime, that doesn't make any difference?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we've got secrets back up in the hollers.
Oh, I'm sorry, what? No, he was asking a distance.
Oh,
But
I
it's,
don't know.
but it's all ag land.
It's all ag land. Okay.
And I submit to you, Mr. Chairman, we just, there's no reason for an adversary of ours to be purchasing land in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
But non-agricultural land, it's not covered by the bill. They can,
No, because we're particularly concerned about agriculture. There are also food security issues associated with this that we need to be thinking about.
okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few questions. Do we know currently how much of our agricultural land has been acquired by foreign adversaries? Is that happening now?
Hold on, I saw an article about that, Mr. Chairman. Give me just a second. We believe that it's somewhere around 1.5 million acres, 1.6 million acres.
In Virginia?
In the United States,
Okay.
according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And that's a lot of land. 1.6 million acres is what we believe.
So follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hashmi.
So I was just reviewing some of the research on this, and it says 5 countries have accounted for approximately 62% of all foreign-owned land, agricultural land in the United States. But those nations are friendly nations: Canada, Netherlands, Italy, United Kingdom, and Germany. Canada is the leading one at 31%. So it seems like 62% of foreign-owned agricultural land has been acquired by nations that are friendly to the United States. So I'm just curious how much we have an impact in Virginia with these designated foreign adversary nations that are purchasing the land.
Mr. Chairman, if we pass this bill, we'll know. We'll know next year, because that's part of what this bill does.
Mr. Chairman, just one more.
Senator Hashmi.
Sorry, this is my last question. Because this is such alien territory, I think, for us in state government, you'll forgive my ignorance, is there a process at the federal level that regulates the purchase of agricultural land by foreign entities? Do we already have that in place, and who does it go through? Would this bill then have any kind of a relationship with the...
I can't speak to that, but I know that Senator Warner and Representative Spanberger are working in those directions at the federal level. But I don't know the specifics. I apologize.
Thank you.
I can maybe address that.
Oh, okay. Senator Obenshain.
It's an odd coincidence that when I returned to my law office on Friday afternoon, I had in the mail from the federal FSA a bulletin advising me, with a federal form advising me of the requirement that I, on behalf of my clients, report to the to the FSA every sale of real estate to a foreign national. I'd never seen that, and frankly, I don't do real estate, so I threw it in the trash. But it was, so there is a federal process and a requirement that disclosures be made.
Even Luxembourg, yeah. Even Luxembourg, yeah.
Even Luxembourg.
Okay. All right, Senator Lewis.
Yeah, I just have a question of Senator Stewart, and I'm just trying to figure out how this would work practically. I'm looking through the definitions here. So if Shanghai LLC comes and pays Joe Farmer $500,000 for a farm, and then nobody knows who owns the LLC, how's that work practically speaking?
Practically speaking, I believe that once we flesh out
that LLC is owned by a foreign adversary, that sale becomes void.
Void is what that says.
So I guess your constituent keeps the money and
Keeps the 500,000?
foreign adversary's out of luck.
Okay, all right.
Senator Stewart, suppose our good friends in Luxembourg buy some property, buy some farmland, and then they sell it to an adversary. Does the bill, foresee
The
that?
sale is void.
That sale would be void?
Sale is void.
Okay, very good. All right, anyone?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Mason.
So we all have properties that have deed restrictions in them that say you cannot sell this property to anybody that is not of the white race.
That's
It's unconstitutional. You can't do it. I mean,
that
the
is
courts
void
have-
ab initio is the term that's applicable to that restrictive covenant. Things that go against public policy are void ab initio. It means they just have no effect and they never did. So they're no good.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Senator
so
Mason.
you can just pick a list of people that you don't want to sell property to and refuse to sell property by law without discriminating against people.
No, I just said that's void ab initio. The restrictive covenant is no good.
But your bill, because you call out a foreign government, a percentage of ownership, and put those requirements, you can restrict the sale of a property to, how is that legal?
If they are determined to be a foreign adversary by the Commerce Secretary, federal entity, that's how we're doing it. And that would not be void ab initio because that's a national security interest. Because we don't want, you don't want your enemies coming in and closing in on you from the inside. That's the idea. So that is not void ab initio. That is not unconstitutional. That is protecting the health, welfare, and safety of the citizens. And it is our job, our responsibility to do that. Perfectly constitutional.
And to Senator Obenshain's point, the federal government is interested in knowing who owns land, period, whether it's farmland or anything else. They're not saying you can't, but you can't buy it, but they want to know. That was your take on that? So it seems like the world is kind of moving in that direction, regrettably, but all right. Any other questions from the committee? Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of the bill?
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak on this bill, please raise your hand electronically now.
Mr. Chairman, Martha Moore, Virginia Farm Bureau. We appreciate the patron working with us. We had some concerns regarding the original bill and some of the definitions, and we've worked to resolve that and some other language that was in the original bill that was taken out. And so Virginia Farm Bureau supports this. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jim Riddell with the Virginia Cattlemen's Association. We have about 25,000 cattle operations across the state. Their latest figures show 7.8 million acres in farmland across Virginia, and we have more than half of that for sure. We support the bill.
Mr. Chairman, Brad Copenhaver on behalf of the Virginia Agribusiness Council. We actually looked at this issue closely, developed a brand new policy statement. We are concerned, the Agribusiness Council is concerned about the adversarial interests, foreign governments purchasing production and investment agricultural land. So we really appreciate Senator Stewart taking a look at this issue and also working through some of the technical amendments as well.
Just a quick question for you. You were, of course, at Department of Agriculture, and do we have any sense of what's owned out there now?
I think this would allow us to get a better handle on that. I was thinking back to my days at VDAX and remember that there are reports that come from the federal, from the USDA Farm Service Agency that does, it used to be in a big FedEx packet that had some data about that. But I think the reporting mechanisms in this bill would allow us to have a more concrete list.
All right. All right. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the bill?
There are no speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. The bill is before us. Have a motion?
Report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to report. Would you open the roll, please? Did I get this right? Peterson, yes.
We good?
Let me see, Joe left the room. Did Joe leave?
Joe doesn't have a
Proxy?
proxy.
No, I think, yes, I think we're good.
Ayes 9, noes 3, abstentions 2.
Ayes 9, nays 3, abstentions 2. The bill reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, finally, I have 1501, and there's a substitute for that as well.
All right.
But
Got a
I'll
motion
ex-
on the substitute?
I'll explain that real quick while they're handing out substitute.
Let's get the substitute
Oh,
before us.
line amendment. No, line amendment, I apologize.
Oh, it's just a line amendment?
And let me explain it, and then I'll ask him to move the line amendment. So I've had several situations lately where there were issues that people had, and there was a lack of flexibility within DEQ to give them some leeway. And so what we came up with, and I worked with the director, and I appreciate him a great deal for working with me on this. There's situations where people have an air permit, a water permit, or whatever the permit it is through DEQ or the Air Board or the Water Board, where they may have forgotten to report something. And then they call DEQ and says, I'm sorry, I forgot to report, but I'll get it done and I'll get it to you, and yet they get a fine anyway. And that's not what we want to do. But if we've got a city who has a broken sewer line and they let it spew for 15 days and don't do anything about it, we want to be able to fine them. So that's what the law currently allows. What I've come up with is sort of a first offender program that we borrowed from the agricultural community that would allow DEQ the flexibility. The bill says shall now. We're going to amend it to say may, because we didn't want them to have to give everybody this opportunity if they were a bad actor and shouldn't get the opportunity. We want DEQ to have the discretion to say to someone who failed to report, caught it themselves, and then reported, for them not to have to fine them anyway. And there's a culture in DEQ, I will tell you, that it's put the hammer down. I'm not saying that's the director, but there is a culture in the ranks at DEQ that just want to slam everybody for the most minor thing. This now gives DEQ hopefully some encouragement and the flexibility to say, okay, you didn't have any environmental harm, you didn't report like you were supposed to, but you're correcting it, so we're not going to fine you as long as you do what you're supposed to do. And that's what the bill does.
So it's just prosecutorial discretion.
That's a good way to put it, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
there you go. Okay.
And so if you would report those line
Yes.
amendments.
On line 13, after by a board, insert or permit issued by the department. On line 15, after violation, strike the person shall be allowed, insert the department may allow the person.
All right, those amendments are before us. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to report the amendments. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The amendments are before us. The bill is before us. Anyone else on the committee wish to ask a question? How about in the audience? Anybody in favor of the bill like to talk?
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak on this bill, please raise your hand electronically.
Is there anyone in the audience in opposition to the bill?
There are no speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, would you open the roll?
Ayes 14, no 0.
Ayes 14, no 0, and the bill reports.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Stewart. And I think our final bill is Senator Morrissey, Senate Bill 963. Sir.
Morning, Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Morrissey, Senate Bill 963. Is there a sub or an amendment?
First, I want to move or adopt the substitute, and I make that motion as a member of the committee.
All right, we have a motion and a second to report the to accept the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the substitute is before us, 963. Tell us all about it.
Mr. Chairman, the essence of this bill is that it allows a major wastewater authority known as South Central Wastewater Authority to restructure its bidding process. It's the first thing. As you may recall or may not, they submitted a proposal, and it was a very large proposal that was well north of $113 million. Bids came back from developers, and because of the size of the project, the bids were really high. They were worried about the risk. So what South Central Wastewater wants to do is restructure it and divide it into 6 components so that they can solicit bids from local contractors. That's what this bill does, and just with a little more brief overview, as you know, all along the James River watershed, there are wastewater authorities that treat our water. They all have been undergoing renovations, as is needed, upgrades it's called. This is the last one to be done. It's also a very large one. They got a grant from DEQ for $83 million. When they submitted it out there to bids, it came in, most bids were around the $235 million mark. Why? Because it's a very large project, okay? So this plant, which serves Petersburg, Colonial Heights, portions of Chesterfield, Dinwiddie, and Prince George, is simply wants to reissue the proposal and break that large, massive project down into 6 components so that they get lower bids. That's what it does, I don't have to explain to this body the necessity of renovating this particular wastewater treatment plan. And with that said, I'd like to call Preston Bryant to give you a little bit, to get into a little bit more of the weeds, if you're desirous of doing that.
Just one question that I had. So the idea here is that because it's now broken up into smaller jobs, there'll be more bidders, smaller companies able to operate with less overhead and what have you, perhaps do it less expensive. That's
one issue. The other is they can say, wait a second, it's not such a massive project. I'm building just on this 1/6 of the former component. I can wrap my hands around that, whereas I can't wrap my hands around the larger project, and because I couldn't wrap my hands around it, I gave a very large bid.
Oh, okay. Senator Stewart.
Joe, why do you need a bill to do this? Why can't you do this without a bill?
Well, can we ask former Secretary Bryant that? I don't want to guess. I have my thoughts on it, but.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Preston Bryant on behalf of South Central Wastewater Authority. This is one of the enhanced nutrient reduction projects that we adopted a couple of years ago. This is one of the 14 in statute, one of the 14 major wastewater treatment plants, not unlike Fredericksburg, that is a priority project because of the environmental benefit, bang for the buck, if you will, that you will get. Because it's in statute, and it's got certain completion dates that they must complete the project by, we actually need this bill to help them with the process. As Senator Morrissey said, they bid it as one big project. You know, the construction engineering estimates were about $113 million. We got 2 bids that came in at ultimately about $235 million. So now they want to break it up, as Senator Morrissey said, into what we envision 6 separate projects, bid them separately, get more local bidders, hopefully more competitive bids, and thus better, less impact to ratepayers, better construction costs. But because it's in statute, we need.
Senator Stewart, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It sounds reasonable to me. Are we extending the deadlines out or anything? I just don't understand why you need a bill to do it, why they just can't do it on their own
Yeah.
by rebidding it and breaking it up.
There is a compliance schedule of January 1 of 2026, but we worked this very closely with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and the James River Association, who hold this as a very important project because of the environmental benefits. They can now have, if they extend it out a little bit, what the bill does, it allows this phased construction project rather than one big project.
I get it.
And
Now, President.
they have to buy nutrient credits along the way as well. It has to be
Thank you.
completed by 2030.
All right. But it's going to get done.
Yes, sir.
All right, very
Can
good.
I just
Any
say
other-
one other point? In
Yes,
the
Senator
interim,
Morrissey.
it has been maintaining compliance, but has been doing that by purchasing credits. So we are talking about a wastewater treatment facility that is fully in compliance right now, will continue to be, and hopefully, with the passage of this bill, the renovation on this project, now broken down, will move forward.
All right. Any other questions of Senator Morrissey? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak in favor of the bill?
If anyone on Zoom would like to speak on this bill, please raise your hand electronically.
All right, come on forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bill Street, James River Association, appreciate the patron and sponsors working with us to be able to keep the time frame and utilizing Virginia's nutrient trading program to maintain the schedules, but also accommodate the challenges in contracting. So we support the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Patrick Fanning with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. We want to thank the patron and South Central for working with us. This ensures the integrity of the enhanced nutrient removal certainty program that we all agreed on 2 years ago, and just allows South Central to account for that with the purchase of nutrient credits until they can bring this upgrade on board. Thank you.
Okay. And Senator Morrissey, make sure you get back to us and let us know when these bids are done, the extent to which money was saved. That would be just an interesting thing, I think, for the committee to hear. So, any other questions? Anyone in the audience wish to speak in opposition to the bill?
There are no speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
All right, the bill's before us. We have a motion and a second to report the bill. Would you open the roll, please?
Ayes 14, no zero.
All right, I believe that that completes the docket for the year of the Senate Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee. I want to thank the staff for just doing a wonderful job this year in keeping track of us coming and going and doing whatever. And it's just been a pleasure. And it was great to have substitutes on paper. A lot of times we're getting them online, and it's difficult to look that stuff up. And I also want to thank the Agriculture and Natural Resources fans we have out there who attend these meetings and make such a vital contribution to all of us. We appreciate it very much. Thank you, and we'll see you when the House comes over. And thank you so much, and the committee will rise.